We making waves, 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 artist waves. We making waves, 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 artist waves.
All right. Good morning. Welcome to Artist Waves Live. Thank you, K-Bong, for our intro song. My name is Jeff Gorra. Special Friday morning edition of AW Live. And that's because we have, from NBC, Willie Geist joining us on Artist Waves Live this morning. Let me preface before Willie joins us here that I have a column on AW Live, on artistwaves.com that is specific to how music inspires my life. And we've done a lot of really cool features in this column that have had people outside of the music space, like Kay Adams recently, like Kenny Mayne, Adam Schefter, a couple of other people. And Willie has been kind enough to take time out of his busy schedule to end the week to talk to us about how music inspires his life. A couple of stories that I think I have in mind already in terms of Willie and I crossing paths. And you know Sunday Sit Down, you know MSNBC, you know the Today Show, you know all the fun stuff. So we'll get into it. I think Willie is here, so let's start talking. Excuse my reach.
Am I sideways? Oh, I'm sideways, aren't I?
You're sideways, but it's cool. I can go like this.
No, it's not cool at all. This was ill-conceived, giving me the keys to the technology here, which is like giving the keys to a vehicle to a toddler. You know what? I'm just going to hold it. I have all this equipment that's worthless, so I'm just going to hold the phone. How you doing, man? Is that better?
I'm doing all right, Willie. How are you?
Good. Is that better?
That's great. Yeah, that's
okay.
Perfect.
After all that, I'm just going to hold the phone because nothing works in life.
Right on.
This. Yeah. How you doing, man?
Well, I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm good. So you're a Ridgewood guy too?
You know, from one Bergen County native to another, I am really excited to talk to you. I am from Bergen County. Started in Ridgewood. I spent from 8 years old on in Allendale.
Oh, cool.
So,
A&G, Allendale Bar and Grill, man.
One of my favorite places on the planet.
Is it still there? I hope it's still there.
It's still there. Yeah, they're still kicking. They're still doing their thing. Same menu.
I think I took my high school girlfriend, who is now my wife, Christina. I want to say senior year in high school, we went there for dinner, and we ordered a beer, and I think we got it, and we were like 17. So it can be told now that was a different time, I think, when things were a little more lenient. But it's a great spot.
It is. That sounds about right. And they haven't changed much. I mean, I don't live too close to it anymore, but anytime I go back to town, get back to Allendale, I make sure I stop in there and get a burger and a beer. And
yeah, no, it's awesome. Well, it's good to be with another Jersey guy.
Right on. This is, of all of these, this is the first that I've done where there's a Bergen County connection. And I'm telling you, I should preface by saying in Artist Waves and these types of conversations, we talk a lot about how music has inspired your life and in your career. And I'm curious, coming from Bergen County myself, what was music like for you in the area growing up and what you were exposed to, influenced by? I had heard Rolling Stones was quite the popular background music in your house, but other than that, what was it like in Ridgewood for you?
So it's a good question. So it started with my parents' influence, like so much. The baby boomers, they loved the Stones, they loved Led Zeppelin, David Bowie, the Talking Heads. So I had a great foundation of that stuff. My dad would listen to the blues too, so B.B. King was in there. And so that's sort of where I was coming from, that the Stones were like the ultimate rock and roll music. And when I started to divert from my parents a little bit, keeping that foundation this was late 80s into early 90s when I was in high schools, when hip hop was taking off in New York City. And I got really into it. And there's a show called Video Music Box hosted by Ralph McDaniels, Uncle Ralph as he was known, and they would play rap videos. So we would hustle home every day after school. I remember my friend Eric Wilkins and I would get a Dr. Pepper and a bag of barbecue chips, Crunchers, and we would sit and watch. And it was in the days that young people can't understand, said the old man, where you would just cross your fingers and hope you saw the video that you wanted to see. You couldn't go on YouTube and find it or see it on Instagram. You had to just, through that 30-minute or 1-hour show, you had to sit and hope you saw that video. But that was our introduction to hip hop. And Ralph McDaniels, he deserves a lot of credit for sort of leaking what was happening in New York City in the 1980s and early 90s out into the suburbs and popularizing hip hop to an audience that hadn't been exposed to it. So I got really into it. We all did. I mean, everybody in my high school, that was, Public Enemy, and then Beastie Boys came in, and it was, Naughty by Nature, and it was all NWA was in the mix. So I sort of had, on the one hand, this foundation of great rock and roll music, and on the other hand, this thing that my parents had no relationship to, obviously, given their age, which was hip hop. And I found that it was easy to hold both in my head at once and love them both equally.
Right up. My story is very similar. Pulling on the TV, pulling the plug, pulling it outwards, watching to try and wait for the November Rain video. And then, you're exposed to everything else that comes on. And then, the Lumineers are from Ramsey. They started in Ramsey. They went to Denver, and that's where they hit it off. But
right. Yes. We've got them, Fountains of Wayne from Wayne, obviously. And, of course, the Jonas Brothers from Wyckoff. Let's not kid ourselves. All right in the neighborhood. Amazing.
See, who says there's no music coming from Bergen County?
We can't quite claim Bruce or Bon Jovi. They're a little farther south. But
I just call them my uncle, and everyone understands. So then you make your way down to Vanderbilt, and Nashville, obviously, is a whole new mecca. What was your exposure like there in terms of the music you were grabbing hold to, and that was influencing your work?
Yeah, so that was the next chapter of growth for me. So it went rock and roll, hip hop, and then I moved to Nashville. It was a big trip from Ridgewood, New Jersey to Nashville. But believe it or not, there were 7 kids from my high school class at Ridgewood High School who went to Vanderbilt. It was just becoming kind of a national school, and I think they were actually recruiting in the New York area to try to get more kids from outside the South to come down there. So we went down there, 7 of us, and that was all new to me. It was all new. I remember there's a festival they have every summer, and we went down to visit the school in the streets downtown in Nashville. Country Fest, or I can't remember what it's called, but it's a big country music festival where everybody plays. And we were walking through the streets, and Tammy Wynette was playing, and all these Garth Brooks, all these big stars. And country music had always felt totally foreign to me, and still did until I actually started school. And all my friends were from the South. They were from Albany, Georgia, and Lexington, Kentucky, and Memphis, Tennessee, and Chattanooga, and all these places where that was their hip hop, those were their storytellers. And so something that I thought was sort of this cartoonish, country cowboy hat and boots kind of thing became a real source of great music. And I got into that too. And now it's one of my favorite genres. So I feel lucky again to have been, like growing up around New York, to have been exposed to hip hop, but to be in Nashville and to be influenced by all those artists where you could walk into any dive bar or go down to Broadway or go down to Second Avenue and see some great up-and-coming singer sitting on a stool with an acoustic guitar, and to learn the truth about country and to appreciate the songwriting and what it meant to go to Nashville with the dream and the guitar. So I really did pick up country there too, and it stayed with me. And what's interesting is since then that country's become so popular nationally that my kids, although they live in New York City, they love country music. And, we went, when we were still going to concerts a couple years ago now, I guess, or a year and a half ago, we went and saw Chris Stapleton, my kids and I, at Madison Square Garden, and the place was sold out. Or you could go see Jason Aldean at the Garden. It's sold out. So country has transcended its Southern roots and now is as big up here in New York as it is anywhere.
Yeah, that's a very similar thing happened to me when the first time I went to Nashville. You can't really explain it until you experience it, and then it never leaves you. And speaking of concerts in New York City, you know, part of the reason why I knew that I thought that you were somewhat of a big music fan was because you and I briefly crossed paths once, 2015 Global Citizen Fest.
Yeah, yeah.
In Central Park. It was the most beautiful day, and it was the first time I went to Global Citizen as a member of the press. So I get my credentials. I got there super early because I was like, I'm going to be the first one in this press area, and I'm just going to take it all in and get a feel for the day and how this is going to just impact all these people. I get in as soon as the gates open, and I was not the first one in because there was a stage set up right against the press barricade. And I think you guys were doing some live interviews or some live footage, and you were the first one there. And then Pearl Jam played, Beyonce, Chris Martin, Ed Sheeran. It was amazing. And at one point, before the floodgates opened, I think it was Chris Martin and Hugh Evans came out and just tested the mics or said hi. And you and I were up against the barricade from a distance, and we were the only ones there. And we kind of gave each other like this head nod, like if a fist pump could be a head nod.
Yeah. Those days are unbelievable, aren't they? I mean, for people who don't know, it's in the middle of Central Park. It's a free concert as long as you give your time and donate it and do charity work. And the lineups they get, you just laid it out. That was one night. The bands you just talked about was in one night, one after another. And it leads up to the big, it's all day. And then at night you get Beyonce or Rihanna or whoever it is. But the opening act is Ed Sheeran, or the opening act is Chris Martin and Coldplay. It's just a wild night. And that is really, I've been lucky because MSNBC broadcasts it. So I've sort of hosted the coverage a couple of times. And boy, that's a gig everybody climbs over each other to be one of the two people hosting that, because you get to talk to the artists. But mostly, you're just there watching a concert all day long. So I've been lucky to have my kids come and join. I remember that Beyonce show. The thing that struck me about that was this was one night, kind of a one-off concert for everybody and for her. And it had all the production of a show that if you went and saw her on tour, if you went and saw her at Giant Stadium, or if you went and saw her in Dodger Stadium, whatever it is, she did that show. Even though it was a brief set, it was probably 45 minutes or an hour shorter than she would do. That, man, like, if she's doing a gig, she is doing a gig, and it wasn't that she just showed up and sang a couple of hits and left. It was massive production with elevators and dancers and different boxes all over the place. So those are some of it's a good time of year. It's nice out. Those are some of the most fun nights we've had with music in New York, for sure.
Yeah, that was a special one. And then she comes out and plays a stripped down Redemption song with Eddie Vedder, just an acoustic guitar, to an ocean of 60,000 people or something,
Oh my God. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. I mean, even just as we're similar guys from a similar place, to see Pearl Jam live. I've seen them live other places, but to see them up that close and just ripping off Redemption song or anything off their catalog, just so cool. What a lineup.
That was one I'll never forget. So I'm curious for you, in terms of your prep and what your day-to-day routine is and how music fits in. Let's say you're about to go on air, or you're in your dressing room hour before. Do you have a playlist? Do you have songs that you go to that get you into the vibe or the spirit of before you're about to go live?
The truth is, Morning Joe, which is my weekday gig, which I just did a little while ago, is so early in the morning that it's a mad scramble to get in, get showered, get dressed, get on the air. And these days, frankly, you walk in and it is there's nobody in the building at 30 Rock. So there's no makeup artist, there's no hair, there's no dressing room. Not that I do much with my hair, obviously, but had the same cut since I was at George Washington Middle School in '86 in Ridgewood. But I will, because you need some of that energy to get going, to get a cup of coffee, I will definitely put it on. I found lately, it's funny, I ran a half marathon in November for the first time, and I had a playlist for that. So I find I'll just hit that on shuffle because I know those are sort of motivational songs. And I find, I don't know what it is, maybe it's the algorithm. It almost always starts with All the Lights by Kanye, because talk about a pump up song. That one will get you going for sure. But it's also, if you looked at it, it is the funny story of exactly what we were just talking about, which is the Stones are on there, Kanye's on there, Jay-Z's on there, but so is Stapleton, so is, you know, Luke Combs and Luke Bryan and all these artists that sort of pepper my life from being a kid in New Jersey to being a college student in Nashville. It's all there. But I think if you ask me, you've got to go one song to get going, I'm going to go All the Lights by Kanye.
That'll fire you up and get you in the zone for sure. I love it.
Definitely.
What about, do you have a favorite interview that you've done with a musician or a band that maybe it's an experience or it's one of your favorites that you got to sit across from?
Yeah, I would. It's hard because I love music so much, and the nice thing about the Sunday show is it's once a week, so we can really curate who we pick and who we interview. I'm not cranking out 10 interviews a week, so you have to say Dolly Parton I've always loved. You know, I since I was in Nashville, or before that actually, with her. But I've had the chance to go down to Tennessee and interview her 2 or 3, maybe 4 times, and then also on remote interviews and other times on the Today Show in the studio. But she is like, you know, she's everything you'd hope she'd be. She's a brilliant musician, a brilliant businesswoman. And you go down to Pigeon Forge where she has her Dollywood. She's got the theme park, and she's got a whole resort. And you realize as you're sitting and talking to her, just over the mountain from where you're sitting is this 2-room cabin where she grew up with 12 other people. You know, she's got 11 brothers and sisters and her parents, so more than 12. And they didn't have running water and didn't have electricity. I mean, it sounds like a country song. It sounds almost like a cliche, but it was her life. And now, just back over that mountain, she's got a theme park named for her and $1 billion empire. And she's this beloved figure who's paying for the vaccines that everyone's getting. And so that was special. And to go back to the top of our conversation with the Stones, I did get a chance, I have twice now, to interview Mick Jagger, which I'm rarely sort of stopped in my tracks by someone, but when you have that much history with someone and you feel like they've been in your house and in your life for all these years, and then all of a sudden you find yourself sitting foot to foot with Mick Jagger, and there he is. He just sits down casually. For him, it's another interview. For you, it's, you know, what do you say in those first minutes before you start? What you've meant to me, and he hears that from everybody. But my gosh, that one took me a couple minutes where I was like, that's Mick Jagger. That's the guy who's been in your ear and in your head for 35, 40 years now. But what I say about that interview is when you get past that first moment, you know everything there is to know about him. And if he drops the name of a song or an album or a moment in their run, you're going to know it. So then all of a sudden, this comfort washes over you and you go, I got this. There's nothing he could say right now that I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And so that was really special. That was 5 or 6 years ago, and that was a huge one. So I'll go Mick 1, but boy, Dolly's right there at close second.
Both fantastic conversations and hard to talk. And, you know, you made me think back a little bit. We were talking about Global Citizen, and I remember that one of those moments where I was in there and you were in there by yourself on the stage and glancing over real quick, and you were sitting on like a folding chair, and it looked like you were taking notes and really kind of like tuned into what you were about to do. And that image has stayed with me because as someone who also does interviews, you know, it was an inspiring little snapshot to see someone who's with MSNBC on the stage taking that moment so seriously and giving the respect to the artist that you're about to speak with. And that's one of the things that I've always admired about your interviews, really admired, is that you focus on the moments, not just the facts. And not everybody does that. And just, you know, like with Willie Nelson recently or with Dolly Parton, what was that like for you? Why did you do that? It's like you think about your questions, but then you think about, why am I asking that question? So what is your interview process like? Because obviously, you know, you put a lot into it. And in your prep, what are some of the things that you do when you were sitting on that folding chair?
Well, first of all, you're nice to say that, but I was probably just playing Family Feud on my phone. Just, I mean, if we're just being two guys being honest with each other. No, I'm just kidding.
Then you were drawn on your phone.
I know. No, I think my process, you're right. I try to study, do a bunch of homework, internalize it, and I will write everything down. I'll have an outline of where I hope the conversation will go, or at least some subject areas. but I don't bring notes to an interview, because I find if you start leaning on that, you ask a question and they start talking, and then you have the luxury of glancing down and thinking about what's next. And if you take that luxury away from yourself, all you're doing is listening. You're not running through in your head, okay, what is the next question? How should I ask it? How am I going to phrase it? And then all of a sudden it becomes a conversation, but that requires preparation. You can't just go in cold. And again, I like to be able to drop facts in there and to drop references in there that let them know that I'm fully engaged with this. I've studied, I know about your project, I know your history, so we can just talk and you can trust that it'll be a good conversation. And so that's just preparation. That's reading as much as you can read. It's listening to the album of whoever you're going to interview, or watching the movie, depending on the person or the TV show, and knowing everything there is to know, more than you would ever need to know in a 45-minute or 1-hour conversation with somebody. And then just go in. And I was actually, it's funny, I was talking to my son about this the other day. He's 11. He had a science presentation, and he was nervous about it. And I told him, preparation melts anxiety. So if you know everything there is to know going into that thing, and you know you've got it down, you're going to be good. So you rehearsed it 100 times and you crushed it. And that's how I feel about the interviews. If you go in confident that you're prepared and ready, the anxiety that is natural and everyone feels for every interview goes away. It may be there at the beginning, but it melts pretty quickly. And the person you're interviewing can tell. They say, oh, this guy's taking this seriously. He did his homework. He's here with me. He's engaged. He's listening to my answers. He's following up. And that lends itself to a better interview, because then that person tends to trust you a little more and open up and maybe tell you something that he or she hasn't told somebody else. So I guess the bottom line for me is preparation, and then just I always say be a person, and that just means react the way you would if you and I were hanging out at the AB&G having a beer, not in a way that you think a TV interview should react. And just be a person, have a normal conversation, and I think you get more out of the person you're interviewing for sure.
That's really well put, because then you get into the art of conversation, and that everyone is just tuning into your authenticity. So you really inspired me in that regard. So I had to ask that question.
Thanks. Well, I think, also what you're doing here is good too, because I always say we try to strip away what's artificial about a TV interview. It's hard because there are lights, and there are, in our case, 5 or 6 cameras and a bunch of people scurrying around. So that's not natural. It's already an artificial conversation because we can't start until everyone's ready. So to the extent you can take that away and make the person feel like it is a normal conversation, like we're just talking on our phones right now. If you can capture that in a TV interview, which again is very hard, because believe it or not, even the biggest stars in the world in movies and music, and I've found this to be a revelation, they're anxious about the interview because it's not their thing. It's not normal. They're not on the stage controlling the crowd and calling the shots. They're waiting to see how they have to react to you. So to the extent you can make them feel comfortable and not make it feel like this is an interview, 3, 2, 1, we're starting now, and just talking like you and I are right now, then I think that helps for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved that about your interview with Dax Shepard too recently, because he's an interviewer as well.
Yeah.
Who's really good at it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a perfect example of what you just explained. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm sure you're quite busy heading into the weekend. I'd like to end, if it's cool with you, with a little rapid fire fun
Sure.
Question about music.
Yeah.
The first one being, what was your first concert ever?
Jimmy Buffett at Jones Beach on Long Island. Wasn't raised a Buffett guy, but a friend had tickets. We went. It was outside in the summertime. It was an absolute blast. If you've never been to a Jimmy Buffett concert, even if you're not a big guy in his music, the experience of it is worth going once.
Wow, that's awesome. That's one way to get introduced to concerts for sure. You'll get it all.
Yeah.
Sweet. What was your favorite? Do you have a favorite concert that you've ever been to?
I have to say, for my birthday about 10 years ago, my wife surprised me with tickets to see Jay-Z at the Meadowlands. It was at the old the Continental Airlines Arena. And she splurged for tickets, and it was one of those things that maybe you've had if you're lucky in your life, where you walk into the arena and then you go, okay, we're going down the stairs. That's a good start. We're not going up the stairs. And then you go down another set, and now all of a sudden you're on the floor and you're walking, you're walking, you're walking. I don't remember what row we were in, but we were pretty close. And as I said, a guy who grew up on hip hop and loved Jay-Z, that was awesome. Now, every Stones concert I've been to is great too, just because I love them so much. But the one that always jumps to my mind was that Jay-Z show at the Meadowlands.
Wow, incredible! That's cool. I have yet to see him on his home turf, so I have that one on my radar. What is if you had to say your favorite band? There's one band that you're going to on hit play on the phone. Favorite band, favorite artist. Who would it be?
I hate to be redundant, but the Stones. If you're sitting there and you go, what's the default? Stones. But it's been fun to introduce my kids to new music. They have good taste in music, so we'll dip into Fleetwood Mac or the Talking Heads. We're trying to expose them to that, and they're receptive to it, which is awesome. So, but I got to go Stones if you're only giving me one.
That's awesome. Great. Yeah, that these artists should be a subject in school. I agree. I have little kids too. It's important to make sure.
Definitely.
Last thing, who do you got coming up on Sunday Sit Down? Who can we look out for on the podcast interviews?
So this Sunday, we've got Amy Poehler, the great Amy Poehler.
Cool.
She just hosted the Golden Globe. She directed a new movie that she's got coming out. And so she's she's one of those easy people to talk to where you fire up the camera. We're doing them mostly on Zoom right now. And we talk for an hour about SNL and Parks and Rec and the movie Moxie she's in and directing. So she's our next one. And I should know, I'm looking at a little sheet of paper that I don't have in front of me, but I'm sure we have many exciting musicians. We're doing Sharon Stone next week. I know that. Queen Latifah is coming up. I'm thinking of music there, which will be great to talk to her about 80s, 90s hip hop and other things. And I think that's all I can think of at the moment, but we've had a bunch of musicians. Like you said, Willie Nelson was 2 weeks ago. That was an incredible treat. 88. He's about to be 88 years old and still bringing it. Still fun to talk to, still knows all the stories, can tell you that On the Road Again was conceived of. He was in a plane and wrote it on the back of an air sickness bag. He was writing it for a movie, and he said, what about this? On the Road Again, On the Road Again. He wrote it down, and an iconic song was born in the back of a puke bag. So those are the moments, again, where you just feel lucky to have the job you have, where you asked Willie Nelson if he'd be interested in sitting down with you, and he said yes for some reason. And so then you open your laptop, and there's Willie Nelson on your computer. So I'm a lucky guy.
Oh, special. And I think in the same sentence, he said, I'm 88, and I really can't wait to get back out and tour again.
I know.
Gosh, what a legend.
I know. He gets back on that bus. It's kind of all he knows, I think, his whole life. So he needs to get back out there.
Yeah. Well, Willie, thank you so much. I know you're busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me and Artist Wave. This was a blast. Thanks for all your inspiration, and I'll be tuning in Sunday, of course.
Thank you, man. It was great talking to you. I just realized I did not intend this, believe it or not. There's Johnny Cash on the cover of Life magazine over my shoulder.
I thought that's who that was. Perfect.
Can you see him? There he is.
There he is.
Just chilling by a locomotive with an acoustic guitar, cranking out some jams. That's our guy right there. I also love Johnny Cash. We should have talked about him too. He's the best.
He is the best. He is. I have one similar somewhere around here too. He gets me in the zone for sure.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
I'll have to run into you in at ABG or Kinchley's or Central Park.
Oh, Kinchley's. Oh my God. I haven't been to Kinchley's in years. Our high school basketball coach was obsessed with Kinchley's. So that's where we always went for the team meal. Pizza. The best.
Also still kicking.
Good. I'm so glad to hear it. Thanks for having me on the show. This was fun.
Likewise. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it, man.
Sorry for the handheld camera work. I did my best.
No, it works out perfectly. That's the joy of these things.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, Willie Geist. Hey, that was awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, for your kind comments, questions, thumbs up, hearts. That was a really fun conversation. We grew up in a similar area, have some similar taste in music, and as someone who interviews somebody that I greatly look up to is Willie Geist and how well he does what he does. So Jeff Gorra, Artist Waves Live. This was a really fun and busy week. The next episode is actually Monday night with Ziggy Alberts, who will be in Australia, which is why it's Monday night. So I'll see you Monday night. Thanks again, Willie Geist. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. See you next time. Thank you.